Hello, BookTube. Well, it's Thursday, so we're going to revive Poetry Thursday. Quite a few channels do Poetry Thursday. We read a poem on Thursday and talk about it a little, and all during 2024, I did that from one anthology from this 20th Century American Poetry, an anthology that I found at a secondhand shop and that I originally was going to pass over because the title of this book, 20th Century American Poetry, is also the death knell of poetry writ large as a popular genre. Once upon a time, undergraduates, business people, commuters on the line from Scarsdale, casual retirees, would read poetry as part of the daily mix of what they read. And that is no longer true. And that hasn't been true since 20th century American poetry. Uh, but I did get the book, and we have been reading through it, and there's been a lot of great stuff. And it occurred to me that there is great stuff coming here and there for the rest of this book, at least for the rest of the section that we're in. And I would hate to miss that. So we'll go through at least this section, this middle section, and if the good stuff isn't coming fast enough to warrant reading after that, then we don't have to continue. So today we will be doing the poet Robert Hayden, and we won't be reading. I will only be reading one poem of his, and it won't be from his long masterpiece. It will be instead a short poem of his that is intensely beloved. It's universally anthologized. It's also incredible, as such poems tend to be. Don't be fooled by a poem's popularity like that. Oftentimes those poems are brilliant. Ulysses by Tennyson is a perfect example. Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening by Robert Frost is a perfect example. There's a reason why these things resonate. And this is his poem from 1966, Those Winter Sundays, which I've read on this channel before in non-related poetry moments, and which I love. It is amazingly good. So I'm going to try and do it justice. Of course, I don't do it justice. I have a terrible reading voice. But if I'm introducing you to this poem, Those Winter Sundays, then so much the better. You can go and read it and love it on your own. Sundays, too, my father got up early and put on his clothes in the blue-black cold. Then, with cracked hands that ached from labor in the weekday weather, made banked fires blaze. No one ever thanked him. I'd wake and hear the cold splintering, breaking. When the rooms were warm, he'd call, and slowly would I rise and dress, fearing the chronic angers of that house. Speaking indifferently to him who had driven out the cold and polished my good shoes as well. What did I know? What did I know of love's austere and lonely offices? Gets to me every time. I have actually stood over this author's grave, and there are a couple of things you can note right away. One is that is just prose. Doesn't have any separate and identifiable existence as verse. But the other you can understand right away on it is how incredibly universal it is, how immediately applicable it is. Probably a son, right? Probably the narrator is a young son whose taciturn working father is showing his love instead of saying it. Banking the fires in a cold house every morning, even though on the weekend he could reliably rest, since he works all day long. And polishing his son's shoes to boot. And without any acknowledgement, without any thanks of any kind, including from the narrator. The narrator is clearly looking back on that time from later in life and being a little bitter about it. The narrator clearly wishes that he could go back in time and thank his father. And that struck a chord. This poem struck a chord. People loved it. It's engraved on all sorts of monuments. It's in every anthology in the world since it came out. Since it appeared in the 60s. It is, I won't say it's the antithesis of the 20th century American poetry that is coming down the pike and that's going to ruin the party for everybody. It's not the exact opposite of that, because it's already doing some of the things that I'm going to complain about at length. It's already doing that. You could have written, Hayden could have written this in a formal verse, and he didn't do it. And it wasn't because it was too hard for him. There was nothing intellectually that was too hard for Robert Hayden. But I don't know why. I don't actually know why those old forms started to be dropped, started to be abandoned. But they aren't completely abandoned here. There is a poetic sensibility here. When the narrator talks about the cold splintering and breaking as though it were a physical thing, that is wonderful. It takes you right out of what would otherwise be a prose narration. And so do a couple of other moments in there. So I'm not discounting it at all. And it is one of the great poems in this book. I mean, it's a big, heavy anthology, but it's full of verse. We've seen lots and lots of verse. But if you took this entire anthology and you were told you have to boil this book down to 10 poems, that would be one of them. So we're coming back to Poetry Thursday on a strong note. We're coming back on those Winter Sundays, which is as strong a note as you're going to get in this book. We'll see how it goes from here on out. So I will wrap this up, and we'll see you all next Thursday. Thank you, BookTube.